Please rewind this cassette.
So, because of the quarantine, I've been stuck in my apartment for 3 weeks, so I figured, what the hell, why not make a best of the decade list? Not that there isn't other entertainment options out there. Have you seen all of the late night hosts who have become YouTubers? Hey, look, it's Stephen Colbert in his bathtub. Isn't he wacky and hilarious? You think with a salary of $12 million a year, he'd be able to afford a better camera and microphone, but what do I know? Then there's that Tiger King show I keep hearing about, but when I went to Google it, I accidentally typed in Tiger Wing. So I just spent the next couple of hours looking at images of tigers with wings.
What are you drawing?
A liger.
What's a liger?
It's pretty much my favorite animal. It's like a lion and a tiger mixed. Bred for its skills and magic.
So here's how this is going to go. I'm going to pick 10 movies. I'm going to talk about each movie a little bit, and then I'm going to pick my favorite scene and my favorite line of dialogue from the movie. So let's just jump in and get started.
He was going to keep you happy. If it was between me and your father, who would you take?
My daddy.
With its novel-like approach and the beautiful lead performance from Casey Affleck, Manchester by the Sea was one of the best character dramas I'd seen in many years. Outside of some awkward editing choices and some weird music cues, this is a truly wonderful movie with powerful acting and sensitive direction. Be warned though, this is a really sad movie. Best scene: Affleck talking to the police in a disturbing flashback sequence. Best line:
I got 2 girlfriends, and I'm in a band. You're a janitor in Quincy. What the hell do you care where you live?
Steve Pink's retro time travel story was the most underrated mainstream comedy of the last decade. It's kind of crazy that something like Bridesmaids had all this money come in and then this movie didn't do very well. Even if it has gained a cult following and it got a sequel, this movie is better than most give it credit for. It's Always Sunny and South Park did episodes that were very similar to this movie, but they didn't have Cusack to better sell the meta premise behind it. Upon rewatch, this film shows itself as heartwarming and smart. Multiple elements are set up and come together in a Back to the Future like yarn. Surprisingly, this movie doesn't ignore moral and existential questions that would come about in this situation. Best scene: when our characters first realize they're back in 1986. Best line:
Excuse me, miss. What color is Michael Jackson?
Black.
You are dead center of the greatest scientific event in the history of man.
Alex Garland's masterwork holds up as one of the best science fiction films that we've seen in a long time. Now that I'm aware of its structure and plot points after several rewatches, what lingers with me are the themes that explore the dynamics between men and women. How things play out throughout the film make you rethink the ethics of everything that came before, and the decisions made by the characters. This is easily one of the most complex and cerebral films on the list. It's the best episode of Black Mirror since the first 2 seasons. Best scene: it's the dance scene. Best line:
You tore up her picture.
I'm going to tear up the fucking dance floor, dude. Check it out.
Christopher Nolan's most poetic and streamlined film in years. This took me back to the filmmaker I so admired as a teenager when I first saw Memento and Insomnia. Outside of being a major technical achievement, this movie plays with themes Nolan has been dealing with since Following. The real surprise of Dunkirk is that in some ways he elevates those themes into something more primal. The movie feels like one huge flex, and I love every goddamn thing about it. Extra points to Nolan for pulling off a well-earned emotional climax. I typically don't like sentimentality in historical films like this, but it's very well done here. Best scene, the opening chase that ends up on a beach. Best line, men my age dictate this war. Why should we be allowed to send our children to fight it? Parasite would be higher on this list, but it just came out, everyone praised it, it was a huge hit at the box office, and it made history as the first foreign language film to win Best Picture. This movie plays with multiple tones, all kept coherent with masterful camera work and editing. This movie has so many twists and turns. Part of the fun of watching this movie is seeing it reinvent itself so many times. It's also really funny. This had to be one of the best theater experiences I've had in forever. This is one of those movies that you want to tell all of your friends and family about. It deserved every single thing that it got. Best scene. Hard to pick, but I'm going to go with the scene of the family partying in the living room of the house they've manipulated their way into. There's a wish fulfillment here that's beautifully nuanced. Best line. Is that tent going to leak? We ordered it from the US. It'll be fine.
Next.
You're incredible, do you understand?
Yeah.
Maybe the most entertaining movie I saw over the last decade. The Safdie brothers show major chops in this movie about a bank robbery going south. This movie shares DNA with Dog Day Afternoon, After Hours, and it even shows shades of Dante's Inferno meets Of Mice and Men. Robert Pattinson brought his acting skills up to a new level that's been exciting to watch continue on. This movie features stories within stories and exciting claustrophobic camera setups that give this movie a constant sense of tension and momentum. This is the kind of movie that after it's over, you want to watch it again. Best scene, the acid story that works as a short film version of the entire movie. Best line, I think something very important is happening, and it's deeply connected to my purpose. Yeah, fuck you. You want me to put Joker on this list? No. Paddington 2, bitches. This is one of the best family films I've ever seen. I've always loved Paul King as a director, but he took it to another level with these Paddington movies. This first film was charmingly timeless, but Paddington 2 is that rare sequel that's better than the original. Hugh Grant is great in this movie, as is the message of acceptance. This is the best Wes Anderson movie since Royal Tenenbaums. And before you give me shit for putting it on the list, this is one of the best reviewed films on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that that really means anything. Best scene. Every scene is the best scene. Best line. Life would be breezier if you loved your neighbor. So is it still okay to like Woody Allen? I'm not sure what the rules are anymore. Anyway, in my opinion, Allen made one of his best films in this romantic time travel story. While making us laugh, Woody also teaches us a lesson about our obsession with the past, reminding you that drowning in nostalgia keeps you from appreciating the present that you live in. Something that hits home in a decade of movies cynically cashing in on nostalgia. This is the purple rose of Cairo for writers. Best scene. It's hard to ignore the opening shots of Paris, but I'm going to go with the scene of Hemingway educating Owen Wilson's character on love and death. Best line. We all fear death and question our place in the universe. The artist's job is not to succumb to despair, but to find an antidote for the emptiness of existence. The King's Speech won Best Picture, from the director of Cats. I'm still not really over it. Revenge of the Nerds set in the world of Bret Easton Ellis, written by Aaron Sorkin. This movie is almost perfect, and it's still not Fincher's best movie. That's how good he is. Jesse Eisenberg has always been great, but he's never been better than as the fast-talking Zuckerberg. A movie that only got more relevant as the years went on. Features arguably the most important score of the last decade. This is a really great movie. Best scene, the wonderful "It's Raining" moment. However, this movie has several classic scenes. Best line.
The internet's not written in pencil, Mark. It's written in ink.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Which part?
Now it's time for some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. The Last Jedi. Alright, I'm just fucking with you. I wouldn't have that on this list. 3 Billboards, the best Coen Brothers movie since Fargo. Life of Pi. Ang Lee does stuff in this movie that is truly world class. The Hateful Eight. Tarantino's most underrated film. Gone Girl. If I didn't make a 1 film per director rule, this movie would have easily made the list. Nightcrawler. This is a much better movie than Hot Tub Time Machine, and I really should have put it on the list, and I'm feeling really bad about it now. Sicario. About 75% of a great movie. Drive. I rewatched it recently, and I didn't love it like I used to, but this was a really big deal for me back when it came out, so it's an honorable mention. 10 Cloverfield Lane. Super entertaining movie by Dan Trachtenberg. Wish it didn't have the last 10 minutes. Beasts of No Nation. Cary Fukunaga's amazing war film that really is one of the best films of the last 10 to 25 years. I'm not really sure why it didn't make the list, but you should check it out on Netflix. Toy Story 3. The opinion on this movie seems to have changed a lot in recent years, but I still love the last 45 minutes. Everybody Wants Some. I like it more than Boyhood. Nocturnal Animals. All the Michael Shannon parts are aces. Mission Impossible 4, 5, and 6, and the John Wick trilogy, and the Raid movies. Those are all my favorite action movies. And of course, 12 Years a Slave, Inception, Whiplash, La La Land, Black Swan, Infinity War, Scott Pilgrim, Skyfall, Wolf of Wall Street, Moonrise Kingdom, and everything else you're going to say should have been on the list. I like Inception too, guys. I like 12 Years a Slave. I like all of these movies, okay? So don't think that because they're not on the list, I think they're shitty.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system.
From the first time I saw Spike Jonze as Her, I knew my relationship with this movie was going to be one of those ones that isn't the most healthy. I watched Her so much, I got burned out on it for a while. It was like listening to the Beatles. Still, this is the Annie Hall of our times. The sci-fi twist only benefits the themes of this movie, and what it's exploring. It's very literary with its science fiction, sort of like a Philip K. Dick novel. Making HAL 9000 a girl and putting that in a love story is just a great idea. I love Joaquin Phoenix in this, and this is the performance I'm going to remember him for, not the Joker. This movie feels deeply personal, like a letter written to someone from Spike Jonze's own life. Some have said it's a response to Lost in Translation, and it's hard to not see Rooney Mara's character as Sofia Coppola. I love the production design, I love the Arcade Fire soundtrack, I love the way this movie makes me feel. Its structure allows it to sneak up on you, becoming a more rich piece of work after you get time to think about it. I've loved Spike Jonze since the 90s, but it started to feel like he needed Charlie Kaufman in order to make something great. With Her, Jonze reminded everyone how good he is, and more importantly, that he could get even better. Best scene. Samantha uses music to create a photograph for her and Theo. Best line. Isn't that interesting? The past is just a story we tell ourselves.
Sometimes I think I've felt everything I'm ever gonna feel. And from here on out, I'm not gonna feel anything new. Just lesser versions of what I've already felt.
You know, looking back, this wasn't a decade that was nearly as good as the one that came before it. 2010 was such a good year for movies that it set my expectations sky high. But everything that followed didn't really live up to it. That's not to say this was a bad decade for movies, because it certainly wasn't. I just found myself being mixed on most of the so-called stuff that was great, and I enjoyed a lot more television than I did movies. The best dad movie of the decade was Jack Reacher. The best I thought this would suck, but it didn't movie was Dread. The best I wish I had thought of this movie was Contagion, which has definitely become more relevant. The best movie that ended a franchise, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Most overrated movie of the decade, Under the Skin. It's not good, stop saying it is. The most underrated movie of the decade, Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping. An amazing comedy that is the Spinal Tap of its day. Most talked about scene over the last decade, it's gotta be the opening of The Dark Knight Rises. This is like the Citizen Kane for Reddit. Everybody tries to figure out how the fuck this scene happened, why the dialogue is written the way it is, why the sound mixing is the way it is. It's hilarious, but unintentionally so, yet it's still well shot. It's really an amazing piece of work. The Dark Knight Rises is the best unintentional comedy, like, ever. So it's finally over. Now I can get back to doing nothing in my apartment for the next few months. Yay! I'll see you bitches later. Tell me what your movies are in the comments section, and thank you for watching.
I'm gonna tear up the fucking dance floor, dude. Check it out.